Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the first of what I'm hoping will be 4 wrap-up videos for the year in which I cover the best and worst books of the year, which I am so excited about. If you are new to my channel, then hi. I should say hi first. Hi, I'm Shelly, and I love books and reading, and I love talking about books. And if that's your jam too, and you want to hang out from time to time, I would encourage you to subscribe. Now let's just go ahead and jump into the meat of this video. In true Shelly fashion, I told you that this is going to be the beginning of my wrap-up content, and yet I didn't tell you what I am wrapping up, but I guess you would probably know from the title and the thumbnail. I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favorite nonfiction books for the year. Now, these were books that I read in 2022. They weren't necessarily, actually none of them were published in 2022, and except for one that's quite recent, but I still don't think it was a this year publication. And I wanted to give you some context of my nonfiction reading in regards to how many books I've read and in the context of my reading as a whole this year. So I have read approximately, though I probably miscounted by 1 or 2, I've read 33 nonfiction books this year, and this is out of the 131 books I've read so far in the year. And we still have a couple of weeks left before the end of December. And I do love nonfiction. It is a good, hearty piece of my reading diet. And it makes up of about, naturally, I don't set out to read nonfiction intentionally, except for Nonfiction November, but you know, it makes up about 20-25% of my reading, somewhere in there. And I have 5 favorites to share with you and 1 new discovery author, because I read 3 of her books this year. I'm actually going to start with her. I've read 3 of her books this year. They are poetry books. They were beautiful. It was impossible to choose which one to pick for this top 5. So I was like, I'm going to do an honorary mention of this writer who is incredible. Now, if you haven't figured it out already, it is Mary Oliver. I read American Primitive. I started with this book. I also read, oh gracious, a sneeze. The sneeze never came. I also read Thirst and her other poetry book, Felicity. She's got quite a body of work out there. I would highly, highly recommend Mary Oliver for all kinds of readers, but especially for those who are nervous about getting into poetry. For those who might have some ideas that poetry might not be for them, or they don't know where to start, or they have something holding them back before they dive into this format. Oh, a visitor! Sorry for the interruption. Mary Oliver has a way about her. She is smart, grounded, and uses a lot of nature metaphors. She writes a lot about nature, but she also writes about the inner workings of our hearts. And there is something about her poetry that gets me every single time. I've ugly cried with her poetry every time I've read it. So with every one of her books, there has been a moment where I just break down and sob, because it was exactly what I needed to read in that difficult moment in my life. Even if the moments weren't that difficult, it was just exactly what I needed to absorb. And it was just, she's so good, y'all. I'm gonna scoot over because I'm going to put in the picture for number 5. These books are ranked, so it is going to get better as I go on, and my number 1 is truly my number 1 read of nonfiction book for nonfiction reading this year. So, starting in at number 5, we have Hiroshima by John Hersey, which is a reporting. It is truly a piece of journalism that is about the night that the atomic bomb landed on Hiroshima, Japan, and it's told from the perspective of those who lived through it. These were originally published as essays in the New Yorker. I believe it took up the entire issue of the New Yorker that month, and it was just an incredible, vivid account of that night. And then at the end of the book, there is an addendum of what happened to these people who survived that horrific night, and the long-term effect of poisoning. It's a really fascinating, fast-paced, interesting account. And the way that Hersey writes it, you have these really kind of these 5, I think, perspectives, and he moves around, and so it feels like you are getting this like bird's eye view of multiple perspectives of that night, so that you get a full picture of what happened. And it was just incredible. Its parts are difficult to read. It was jaw-dropping and clearly really impactful, because I read this as one of my first books this year and I'm still thinking about it today. Coming in at number 4, we have Stag's Leap by Sharon. This book was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. So it opens up as Sharon Olds. This is a book of poetry, by the way. And it opens up with Sharon Olds realizing it's the moment in which her husband comes to her and he wants a divorce. And she is trying to both process that news. It is about the process of grieving somebody that you deeply loved, that you still love, and what this separation from someone you know and you've really attached your identity to, that separation is about, and how that affects her emotionally, and how that affects her spiritually, and the process of grieving and moving on. This was incredible. I keep on saying that it was like jaw-droppingly honest. It was like dripping with emotion and vulnerability, but not in a way where I felt like she is handing it to you and you're like, ugh, I don't want that. Thank you, but no thank you. She's doing it with clarity, with love, with in a way that is like fascinating, and that she is taking you through her thought process that is just, it's just like, wow. Wow. On top of that, I felt like just the language she used is gorgeous, is just gorgeous, but also she doesn't have this pretentiousness to her. There's a groundedness to her writing in which I feel like she knows that she's talking to another human being about the things that she is going through. And there is something about that it feels just so heartfelt. It was so heartfelt and so incredible. I continue to think about this today, and I definitely need to go back and reread it because it was just so good. Number 3, we have, probably to no surprise of any regular viewers, to people who hang out with me regularly, it is Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. This is the story, the musings, the thought process of Annie Dillard going out into nature, spending a time where she is relatively isolated, in which she just ponders nature. It is so good. There are moments in this book that I continue to think about, mostly the moments about bugs, because bugs are fascinating. She was really interested in bugs, and so was I. There's also this metaphysical, philosophical element to it, which mostly I back away from anything that is too philosophical these days, but for whatever reason, this really worked. I just loved her musings. I loved her observations. I was like, Annie Dillard, you are my girl. I'm gonna come to that creek with you and we're gonna hang out and watch some bugs. We're gonna observe some bugs. I didn't know I was quite like that, but in this book, I felt like I found a true kindred spirit. Again, I'm scooching over so I could put the cover of the book for my number 2 pick, because I read this. This was a library book. I read this not too long ago, and it was real good. And that is Susan Sontag's Regarding the Pain of Others, in which Susan Sontag writes about the history of war photography. She writes about the way that it has evolved, the major players in the industry, which is kind of strange to say, but the major photographers that really had these eye-opening moments, these moments captured on film that we now have in our collective consciousness. She writes about that, and then near the end, which is not a spoiler, she starts to deconstruct what it means to be a consumer of war photography, of difficult images, and she takes it even a step further and implores her readers to think about what they are actually seeing in this photography, and to, instead of looking away and being like, I can't see that, it's so hard, to actually grapple with it and to be in the moment with that image. And I thought it was incredible incredible. Her writing is so approachable. It is so fascinating the way that her thinking evolves throughout the essay, and you can like follow it all the way through. It's not, I think one of the things that I love about this list in particular is that I really gravitate towards authors who are grounded, who don't try and write above you, who are trying to grasp this concept that is just so like mind-meldingly hard and difficult. Like, I want to be able to follow it and then be like, oh, wow, that was really interesting. I didn't know that we were going to arrive here. And that is exactly what Susan Sontag does. She takes you through this process of thinking, and she takes you all the way through it and lands at a spot where I felt like she had slapped me across the face in a good way. It was a loving slap, but I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And so Susan Sontag, I mean, number 2. My number 1 book has been my number 1 favorite nonfiction book since I read it. And it's been a minute since I've read it. I really ought to reread it because it is that good. And it is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This is an incredible piece of literature. It is the cornerstone, the foundation to basically all feminist literature that came after it. It is so good. And what I love about this is that Virginia Woolf is asked a very simple question. She's asked to lecture. She's asked to speak to other female writers. And the question is, what does it mean to be a female writer? And she takes that concept and deconstructs it. And she talks about how women are not allowed access to certain things. For example, even a space in the library, like the restricted area of the library. As a woman who is attending this college, she still needed permission from her husband to enter the restricted area of the library. This was only 100 years ago. There was something about that really, really spoke to me. She also was talking about how women need a space of their own and a little money, and then we will see women thrive as writers. And she goes into those concepts with profound thoughtfulness and articulation. It is like a mic drop moment. I, again, was just in awe of the way that she was able to articulate her ideas and the way that they've been able to stick with me. And some of the things, I think I said this before, but I'll say it again because it's truly like how I feel. But in a lot of ways, Virginia Woolf articulated something that I knew in my heart to be true, but I didn't know how to go about saying it. And having her articulate a truth that I carried with me and that now I can put into words is just a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful moment for me. And I'm not gonna get emotional, but it was just such a meaningful and impactful book for me. And clearly, I still think about it today. And I just think if you are going to go out and read one book this year, let it be this one. One nonfiction book this year, let it be this one. It is just a gorgeous, incredible, beautiful, an important piece of literature, and I'm so thankful that I read it. Well, that took a turn. I did not expect that. I was getting all emotional talking about Virginia Woolf, y'all. Okay, well, that's it from me. Please let me know your favorite nonfiction books that you've read this year down below. I'm always looking for recommendations. I would love to know the best of the best, the creme de la creme of nonfiction that you've read. Yeah, and that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.